Hello, Dr. Farnsworth. Thanks very much for joining me on the show.
Looking forward to it, Carl.
Yeah, I've been aware of your work for many, many years. I remember picking up your book, See It and Sink It, when you worked with Nick Faldo. I would imagine that was back in was that the late 80s, early 90s, something like that?
Yeah, actually, it was 1995 that we started working with him, and through the Masters and the 1996 win. So it was a special time. That was one of my first real big name tour players. He followed Bernard Longer. That was my first one, both sent to me by Ledbetter. So we had a good start.
So I didn't realize you'd worked with Bernard as well. So presumably you must have helped him with, obviously it's well catalogued, the problems that he had with his putting, and he overcame the yips, I think
Yeah.
two or three times, didn't he?
Yeah. He went through one, then we worked with him and helped for a while, and then he went back into the problems again. So
Yeah.
eventually he did something we recommended he do, and that was to use a line on the ball. The other was obviously uh, finding ways to make it work for Bernard.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
one of the all-time winners.
An all-time, probably one of the strongest minds to ever play the game of golf. I think
Yeah, I would.
I always remember, Greg, that obviously from being a European when he missed that putt to win the Ryder Cup at Kiawah Island, a 3-foot putt, and then the very next week he won his own. I think it was the German Open or the German Masters or something. He won by 7 shots the week after, which was just an incredible feat.
Yeah, that's him. Well, a lot people ask me about him, and I just say, look, with a little I worked with him for a year or so, that I realized one thing, that his course management was so far ahead of anybody else that he was, it was one of those guys that doesn't beat himself. He lets the others beat themselves.
Yes.
And he wasn't the strongest in anything other than the mind and the way he planned the game. So that's why he's still winning.
Yeah, I mean, even now he looks like he could still win almost on the main tour, doesn't he? I mean, he's still doing it on the Champions Tour, obviously.
Yeah. Well, trust me, he believes he can.
Oh yeah, I know he does. Yeah, and he doesn't look like he's aged in the last 30 years. He still looks about 45, doesn't he? Incredible.
I know, disgusting.
Whatever pills he takes, I'm sure I like to subscribe to those. Just
Yeah, I agreed.
back to yourself though, Greg. But Phil, for everybody listening who's perhaps not heard of your work, just fill us in on the journey from being an optometrist to being somebody who's acknowledged as one of the best putting coaches of all time. How did all the pieces come together with that?
Well, I think two things that need to be brought forth is that, number one, my dad was a golf professional. So I kind of grew up with a good knowledge, a little more on the outside than the inside, of course. And the other was that I was an optometrist that specialized in eye training and had good success working with children to get them to overcome some visual problems that related to learning. And in that process, started seeing them becoming better athletes, because this was told to me by the parents. And then I did some research and found some optometrists that were actually working with professional teams to improve their visual skills, such as slowing down the perception of the pitch and localization of where the target really was in space. All of those were learned skills I knew. And so I started adapting to that. And off we went into working with the Olympic Training Center, then into working with some of the older, not new Secret Service people, and then start working with the Delta Force Commandos on their training, which they go through my mental work. And of course, golf came calling, and we did a study from 90 to about 96 on what would best help the player aim with a well-known country club, using their members as guinea pigs. They didn't know it, but we were. And came up with drawing the line on the ball, and that's the book, See It and Sink It. Introduced that to the golf community, and off we went.
So were you the first person to suggest putting the line on the golf ball?
I was. it was.
Right.
Um, bring that up because not a lot of people realize that now. I remember working with Hideki, right, the year he won the Masters, and he puts his hands together and bows and says, "Thank you, thank you." Anyhow, yeah, that was my 15 minutes of fame, right? Well,
Right. And why is it, posing an obvious question, from watching many golfers over the past 35 years or so, why essentially, Craig, do people find it so difficult to align themselves with putting? What is going on with the system that makes it so difficult?
well, obviously, I got into this little niche of golf because the basics of golf are no different than a lot of sports. They're visual. And what's more visual, what's more basic than grip and stance and posture and swing is the ability to aim and align. It's eye-hand coordination. It's balance, what we call vision balance. And made me realize in testing athletes for countless years and really hundreds and hundreds of them that people, when they look at a target in space, don't localize it exactly where it is.
Right.
They see it short, long, left, right. Then you put them in the alignment position, or as Jim Hardy says, the sight-on position, and that exacerbates the problem. And so, as you know, most swings and putting strokes are compensations for poor alignment, poor aim. And so my job has always been to try and get people to work with the basics before they let the Indian, run the asylum and go out and try and hit 400-yard drives as the introduction to golf.
Yeah. So what would be some initial steps that people could explore to sort of start the journey of understanding where they currently misalign and how could they better go about developing that skill? Because it is a consummate skill, isn't it?
Well, it's vision gives you feel, and your, shall we say, estimate or judgment or illusion, as Leonardo da Vinci would say, gives you an idea of where the target is, and that visual cortex goes with the motor cortex, and that's you throw a ball or you putt to a target. So most of the time, it's interesting to see, and one of the perception, one of the, I'd say, fun things that I do with a student is to take them and have them look at a target. First, we decide which is their dominant eye. The youngsters, amazingly, Karl, know this, most of them, amazingly. The adults, it's, so it's like, okay, we're getting through to the youngsters. We still haven't got all the adults that don't even know their dominant eye at 50, 60 years of age. So we ask them to make a circle with their two hands and then look at a target across the way, or I'll move myself about 10 feet or so away. And I say, now look at my nose. Now hold your hands up and look at my nose through the hole in your hand. And the hole in the hand with the two hands put together is, like about a silver dollar or so. And it's easy for them to then close one eye and the other and see which eye are they really looking through and see my nose. So now they know the dominant eye. We just say, okay, now we're going to do another test. Look at the cup. And the cup can be, like 20, 30 feet away. I say, look at the cup. Now close your eyes and take your two index fingers, put them together, extend your arm all the way out, point to the target where you perceived it when your eyes are open. Now open and take a look. And it's amazing. Some extremely well-known tour players have just started laughing hysterically and going, oh my God, I don't even point halfway to the cup. No wonder I don't get the ball there. So my comment then becomes, see, technique and mechanics are second nature to what's more important, and that is accurate perception. So you're obviously putting to an illusion, and why you're short, not as short as you pointed, is because of experience. You've gotten it closer. But hey, if you're seeing the target short of actual, you're going to end up short of actual.
Yeah. And presumably then an awful lot of poor strokes in quotes and faulty technique is a result of the subconscious mind trying to compensate for that poor perception. Am I on the right track? Am I on the right track with that?
Yeah, well, it's subconscious reflex of what you've learned exactly. And so you've got to bring it to a conscious level and make an adjustment. And so we know doing visual training, we can improve that skill. But of course, the golfer wants a quick fix. So the quick fix can be leave the flagstick and look up the flagstick a little bit to change your perception beyond the cup, or imagine putting to a imaginary cup further away, left or right, but further, and or as a lot of players say, I'll just hit it harder. I said, well, how general is that?
Good luck with that.
So, yeah.
Yeah. I read in one of the things on your website, one of the programs that you have, that you said that 80% of practice with putting should be around speed control, around pace control, which was music to my ears, because I think that for a lot of golfers it's just the lowest hanging fruit, Craig, really, isn't it? It's just such an opportunity to improve in one specific area of pace control. But then when you see most people, if they do practice anything with the putting, it's very rare that you see people practicing anything to do with pace control.
Yeah, well, between that and green reading, there's nothing that's more challenging for the golfer on the greens. And if you think about it, all 10 feet, all 20 foot, all 30 foot, all 40 foot putts aren't the same. When are they the same? Hardly ever level. They're either uphill, downhill, or all golfers' favorite, uphill to downhill. Okay. So nothing is ever the same. Not only is the time different because you're another day, but you may feel different. Your perception may be different. If you spend all day on a computer and you go out to play golf, I'll guarantee you've changed your perception compared to the morning just by how you use your eyes. And so those things change. But if you take a look at it, an uphill putt of 10 feet on a 2% slope, your regular stroke for a level putt would leave you 2 feet short. And if you're putting at 2% downhill, you're going to be 5.3 feet further with the same stroke that you had for a level putt. So, wow. There's 3 different scenarios with a 10-foot distance. So people really find golf to be challenging, putting especially, and it's a visual game, Karl. That's why we had a good success and a good niche.
So what would be some ideas that you could suggest for people if they were saying, okay, I know a lot of my putts this year I've 3-putted because my pace control has been so poor. What would be some specific things that they could do, Craig, to actually improve the pace control?
Well, as I say to my students, what's a typical thing that you do? Here's a putt. How does that look? And I start looking at them and their eyes are dilating and their palms are sweating. And I say, so this distance, you can imagine 3-putting more than 1-putting and 2-putting. Yeah, I hate, it gets to be this far. It's a challenge. So I said, so a good start to, and the game plan is not, it looks like a 3-putt, but to figure out what are you going to do? So what's your game plan? So I tell all my golfers, the first thing they do when they get to a green is not to go mark the ball. Leave the ball there, go off to the side. I don't care if it's a low side or high side, because you're actually looking between the ball and the cup. And if a player goes to the side and gets their eyes to look at the ball and then travels their eyes to the cup, in other words, axial distance or z-axis distance, as well as they can then best see the uphill downhill, especially if it's moderate to severe,
Mm.
Then they've got an idea with their brain as to the challenge that this cup is going to appear further.
Mhm.
Okay.
Mm.
They can also take a look, and I challenge them, how much faster or slower would this ball get to the cup being level, compared to what you have now? Well, this is quite a bit uphill. It's going to take longer. I said, okay, so it's going to take longer, more seconds to get to this. Oh, yeah, it's uphill. And so you could even see that visualization um, is inaccurate. And 9 out of 10 of your people, if we asked them in a clinic, would say that. We even had one very famous tour player say that. Then I thought, okay, so downhill, what's that going to do? Is that going to be a lot faster to get to the cup? Yeah. Oh, no, 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 no. It finally goes, no, I'm wrong. Uphill take less time. I got to hit it harder. It's slowing down faster. I said, downhill, not going to hit it as hard, are you? So less miles per hour, ball's going to roll out. I said it could be a 1 or 2 second difference, could roll out 3 to 6 feet in 1 to 2 seconds. So visualization is a problem with a lot of players, as well as getting the information. And so let's face it, all we do is a sensory input, see do, and we want to make sure their see is perceptually correct and not an illusion, which they all tend to do, especially if they look just from behind the ball or they walk, even walking and then going back behind the ball isn't as helpful as if they have a system. Okay, it's 20 feet. I'm taking the putter back this far. I'm going to play it at 23 feet. I take the putter back 1 inch further.
Right.
And so they've got a system to work on that can help them and help their perception, no doubt.
Well, every putt really is just an individual puzzle to solve, isn't it? So presumably what you'd suggest, Vic, would be in practice, in training, would you suggest lots and lots of individual putts from lots and lots of different places to sort of build up this reservoir of experience?
Oh, absolutely. Most people don't practice enough of that,
Mm.
correct, as you're saying, and let alone some of the really challenging, like we had a Epson LPGA Tour player, and she asked me, what's the most important part of the putt, the highest point, and then highest read, if it's a 3% down or 4% down, am I going to play it as that? And so I gave her a putt, and the putt actually went uphill for the first almost half. And then it really slid downhill. But all she thought about was the downhill, because that was the steepest part. She barely got the ball to the top of the crest.
Mm.
And so I said, "Look, take a look. I mean, there's a lot of important things that will go on in that putt. And you're looking at just the most um, highest flow, but it has nothing to do with the entire putt."
Mm.
So she goes, "Yep, I guess I answered my own question." So a player has to really take in the information and as you say, experience it and learn from it. That's how we learn from our experience. That's what we're doing.
Yeah.
So that's important.
Yeah. And yet you see so many people just standing in the same place, repeating movement over and over again, which I'm sure it has its part to play in building a decent process. But ultimately putting is the ability to predict based on one attempt, isn't it? You don't get another go on the golf course, obviously.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's an experience, and you can't really have, shall we say, exactingness or accuracy unless you do it to start with and give it a comparison of something. So, everything we do out should be a comparison. And the more we practice, the more we can compare, the better we can prepare.
Yeah. I know in a lot of your work, you coach the mental side of the game. So when somebody's got better at alignment, when somebody's got better at judging their pace, what do you think, or what are your beliefs on some of the most important things from the mental side of the game in terms of putting?
Well, golf is a game of inches. We said that, right? Or, and what's the most important inch is the 6 inches between your ears. And so Quite honestly, Carl, I've worked with a lot of sports at the Olympic Training Center, from fin sailing to team handball to shooting to baseball, table tennis, you name it, right?
Mm.
I've never worked with a sport where golfers tend to do so much more on the course and so little off the course.
Right.
And so we have what we relate to, and not necessarily mine, but has been discussed for years, the 75-25 rule. And when I ask my players, especially the youngsters, I get this blank stare. I had no idea. I said, well, I know, and I know from golfers that you really don't, but in most sports, we have a 75-25 rule that 75% of what you do should be off the field between the years. Visualization, replay, role play, doing drills. I said, how much important is being in the moment, one shot at a time? Oh, yeah, yeah. I said, how much time do you spend practicing that off the field? Or do you self-distract and daydream? How many times have you wondered if you went through a traffic light and it was really green or red? How many times have you driven somewhere and not even sure how you got there because you've been playing on the radio or talking on the phone or daydreaming, which is the biggest culprit to self-direction and external paying attention. So I said, we spend most of the time in one place physically and another place mentally. And all of a sudden in golf, you're supposed to be in the here and now. I said, you don't even practice that enough. So how about working on some drills? And that's what we do with almost every sport, is we work with drills in the laboratory to get people more visual and more visually enduring. And golf is no exception.
There was a great phrase that I heard many, many years ago that I've always related to. It was a guy called Fritz Perls, and he said that we need to stop thinking and come to our senses. And I think that's a great phrase, isn't it? That the idea that
Yeah.
when,
Perfect phrase.
when you're tuned into your senses, by definition, you are here, you're present to your actual experience. And do you think, and I'm answering the question myself, Graham, I know you're probably going to reinforce it, but would you say that these days, with the advent of technology and so much information on phones and so much distraction, that almost everything in life is taking us away from the ability to pay attention?
Well, it is. We just distract ourselves all day long, and it's easy. And when I worked with the Secret Service back in the um, middle '80s, it was amazing how much they realized that what we were teaching them gave them the ability to pay attention for longer. And if you just take a look at the lapses in the mental that happened recently with one of our candidates, I can even go back to the time when President Reagan was on accepting an award, and there was this glass vase or whatever that they handed him, and all of a sudden, someone came out of the audience, grabbed the vase, threw it down, broke it, the whole bit. He could have stabbed the president. He could have done a lot of things. And the Secret Service guys were definitely were daydreaming and were not paying attention. And so when I started working with them, one of the guys in the training, I typically train the trainers. So I train the Secret Service trainers who train the agents. And he said, you're talking life skills. You're not talking just everyday, just shooting or whatever. These are life skills. And he says, what you've taught us is that we must visually dominate a room for as long as it takes, and that your visual dominance is much more basic to us than learning how to shoot, move, and communicate. And so you've proven to us that we're not training correctly. And from that, as he said, which I always like to bring up, at least to myself, is that wherever Dr. Farnsworth goes, he changes the face of training, which I thought was interesting because I look back at the Secret Service, I look back at the Delta, I look back at the Olympic Training Center, golfers, etc. And the ones we've impacted the most have really jumped in with both feet and have changed the way they've trained, changed the way they look, if you know what I mean, perceptually. And so it's one of those fun things that you look back on your career, and that's probably a pinnacle.
Because, and that is fascinating because, I've long thought that golfers, you don't have to be on a range, you don't have to be on the golf course to actually improve your ability to pay attention, do you? You can actually purposely go for a walk every day, 5 or 10 minutes, with the intention of paying attention to whatever you deem important. That's actually great training for the game.
Yeah, no, that's exactly right. And gee, it keeps them from daydreaming, keeps them in the moment, keeps them information processing, which is what they really relate to. I mean, you've got to have the information. It comes from your senses, as your discussion was, come to your senses. Yeah, pay attention to your senses as opposed to daydreaming,
Yeah, yeah,
which we're all good at.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, I'm guilty as charged on that one. Back to being on the green when somebody's playing a game, when they're actually out there and in a tournament, and they're trying to hold putts and do as well as they possibly can. Talk me through what you think are the most important things to be paying attention to. I know there's an individuality to this, but for instance, what would you want a golfer to hold in mind, hold in their mind's eye before they actually pull the trigger?
Well, as we said, it's got to be the information, and there's options um, for before the putt and during the putt. But one of my, I'd say, number one favorites is having a clear, accurate picture of what you feel the ball would look like off your putter, how far it would travel in a second. Um, have you actually visualized the putt going from your putter or from the ball to the cup in the real-time speed?
Yeah.
And so if you want to be like one of my golf pros, I challenge them to always tell me how long it's going to take for the ball to hit and get to the cup at the right speed. And you do that and then even reproduce that over the ball or before you get up to the ball. And now you're reacting to a picture. So now I'm proving to you that golf can be a reactionary sport and not just to a bad thing and go, oh, geez, react to a good picture. And by the way, someone named Tiger Woods said when he putts well, he putts to his picture.
Yeah.
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 Can't beat it. So most people, when we take a look, Karl, at their pre-shot routine, what's the thing they leave out too often? And that's visualization. And we call accurate visualization more important. And it's hard. It's the pinnacle of your skills. And so it's going to take a lot of effort. So why not leave it out and do it the easy way?
But the fascinating point there, Craig, that you're making is that when most people are putting, and they're putting with, gadgets and things like that, which again have the part to play, there's no visualization there, is there? There's no imagery with that. So then why would you imagine that you would suddenly get good at that skill when you're actually out on the golf course? And I think
you're in wrong mode.
Yeah, and I think the point that you make there about visualizing the ball tracking to the hole in real time, I think that to me, when I'm watching somebody, but I think I'm not a vision expert like you, but I can get a pretty good read on whether somebody's a good putter or not with the behavior of their eyes, because you see so many people, their eyes are literally all over the place.
Yeah, you're in a headlight look. Yeah, you can kind of tell whether they're comfortable or not, can't you?
Yeah, yeah, and I think presumably when the eyes are quieter and you're visualizing that putt in real time, probably getting a clear impression of the entry point, you're just providing a very rich map for the body to organize around.
Exactly. And almost everything we do begins with what we see or what we perceive. So what are you putting in perceptually? What are you seeing that your body reacts to? Now, is it a 3-putt? Is that I'm going to get it close? Is it a mechanical thought that may interfere with the sensory information? In other words, you're into the how-tos, the mechanics, as opposed to the performance uh, picture, if you will. So we just are in the wrong system a lot. So there's three reasons a person breaks down. One, they're in the wrong system. Number two, they're thinking too much or too rushed. And number three, they don't have control of their tension or anxiety level. And so they look like they're getting ready for a gunfight.
Life or death, literally. Yeah.
Right, right.
What have you found to be the most useful things then from an anxiety perspective that people can work with to help that?
Yeah, well, there's a lot of things that go into that, but I try and get my students to realize that nothing trumps a good picture. And their challenge is to find a way, if they have to think about fishing or whatever before they go on the green, but somehow they've got to have a good, positive picture of what they're doing. And if they keep working toward that, and the more accurate they are with their picture, then the more accurate will be the response
Mhm.
or result.
Mm. Mm. And I think what you've just said there about walking onto the green, I think I can think back to quite a few players over the years that we've discussed what they do as they actually walk onto the green. And I think that's an opportunity where for many people, they walk onto the green, the brain just gets busier and busier about, I've got to hold this and I must do this. And if I make birdie here, and the mind's just getting so busy. I think if there's something that a player can do as they walk onto the green to kind of slow things down and again come back to their senses, to me, I've found that actually helps them or increases the chances of producing good pictures over the putt.
Well, you're actually, if you're doing things correctly, getting into jobs as opposed to goal. Oh, I got to make this putt. I don't want a three putt or whatever the goals are.
Yeah.
I try and get my students to delineate between jobs and goals, and jobs are things they can do most or all of the time. Goals are things that happen if you do the jobs right. So what's the first job? Well, back to that off to the side between the ball and the cup, taking a look at what do you got here? Okay. And move on from that to go through your pre-shot routine, whether it's a walk, whether it's doing 8-point green reading as part of it. But, or do you see the break better from behind the cup or behind the ball? What's the most important part of the putt? As Aim Point teaches us, it's not the last third, it's not the first third, it's the middle third. That's the geometric tip point. So if you're going to talk about break or x-axis, right to left break or left to right break, then pay attention more to the middle than anything else. Forget the plumb bob and the cup. That may have nothing to do with anything. And so from there, we try and come up with a game plan, that information processing, you will, that gives the player somewhat of a comfort. But the more they start going, oh God, I can't three putt. Oh, they've lost their focus. They've lost being in the moment. And now anything can happen. So they've got to fight that, even though that's human nature, as you know.
Yeah. I love
That's called breaking the natural reflex.
Yeah, I love the idea that putting golf included, putting is just a series of jobs to do, isn't it? You just got to gather some information, and you've got jobs to do. The result,
Right.
the result you can't own, can you? As much as you might want it to go in, you don't own that bit, but you can own the jobs that you do.
Absolutely. And if you think about it, there's hardly any sport that doesn't reward you and challenge you almost every time you step up to the ball. It's not like being at a free throw line is 15 feet. I don't care where it is in the world, but in golf, whoa, we picked up a game that, as Rotella says, can't be perfected, and yet we all think we should be perfect, and then we shoot ourselves in both feet.
I know. We should be pleasantly surprised every time a shot comes off, shouldn't we? Really, rather than being disgusted with anything less than perfection.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
So just to finish off, Craig, I know this is a tough question, and it's a very, very broad generalization, but what
Be careful.
yeah, right. So unfortunately, you have to generalize on a podcast. I keep saying I shouldn't do it, but I will. What would you say? What would your advice be on before somebody goes out to play? What would be some advice? But what would be some good things that they could do on the green to get ready for that day's golf?
There's a routine that most players will do. Um, I think that one of the things I've seen over the years has been feedback devices. Back when I first started out on tour, I watched the European Asian players versus the Americans. And it was amazing how many of the European and Asian players, before they went to the first tee, had training devices. They had strings, they had mirrors, they had this and that. The Americans didn't. And of course, they got their butts beat in the Ryder Cup over and over. And all of a sudden, you started saying, wow, I see the Americans now, and some of the other European players that didn't before are starting to get it and starting to use training devices for feedback, mirror for setup. Can I get the ball online? Maybe a chalk line or a string to get them to track down the line, like as if they were going to putt, mimicking that. So I'd say more than anything, using feedback devices is helpful, but then being able to wean yourself off of it and learn from that and move on to approximating what they'll have on the golf course is important. But feedback, breakfast of champions, folks. Give yourself an idea. You throw 3 balls down and you putt the first one at short, the next one long, the third one somewhere in between, it may go in the cup. Got it. Okay. So we practice poorly and we don't really prepare well enough. And I want every putt on the green to have a purpose. Speed, line, or all the above.
Yeah, yeah. What have you just one last question then, moving off the greens? Because I know you help players not just on the greens, but again from a mental game perspective. What have you found to be some of the most important things to consider in the whole of the game, not just on the greens?
Yeah, I think that most of the really good players are prepared for each shot. They literally have a good picture. They understand when they don't hit the ball well that they can imagine themselves hitting the ball well, seeing the ball goes where it's supposed to have gone. And so they play a good mental game. They have jobs they try and do out there. Some even have them written down on paper. So they remind themselves, oh, I need to replay a bad shot, see it in my mind go correctly. I need to do some stress response drills because I don't need to be the mentality that, oh yeah, I blew it. I was in the final group and I just need to be there more often. Baloney, you may never be there again if you weren't prepared in the first place. So how do you prepare? Okay. You got to have responses to stress. You've got to go through role playing. Imagine this happening. See yourself hitting bad shots. Seeing yourself regain your composure.
Yeah.
Do all those things you did as a kid. Hey, I was Batman. My brother was Robin. Okay, I was Superman. He was whatever. So we do all the role playing. Why don't you role play? Seeing yourself play well. Seeing yourself hit some bad shots. See yourself recover. Go through some of that so you're ready when you play. And write those notes down. Use them.
Yeah, I think that point that you make there to me is so important. That it's not just visualizing the good stuff all the time is of limited value, isn't it? Visualizing how you overcome some of the setbacks and your responses to setbacks, that can be hugely valuable then.
Absolutely. We've realized that. They asked Ben Hogan how many perfect shots he hit after this one guy shot 69. That was a club pro and says almost every shot I hit was perfect. And they asked Ben, who didn't want to break the course record and that shot like a 69 also or whatever. How many perfect shots you had? And he went, maybe 3.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah. Maybe
right.
the most competent player of all time, and he only hit 3 shots.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Tough on himself, but knew how to put it together, right?
Dr. Farnsworth, that's been fascinating. I thoroughly enjoyed that conversation. I was looking forward to speaking to you. Where can people find out? I know, obviously, the book, See It and Sink It. Presumably, that's still available.
It's not so much. It's not produced anymore. They probably can get it on Amazon, but the book that it's called The Putting Prescription is one that came out. The Putting Prescription is more for inclusive of things other than the See It and Think It, which was totally all visual. The main thing about See It and Think It is hardly anybody got back to the back, which is a lot on the mental side of performance. And so we kind of included some of that in the latest book, The Putting Prescription, but we've had a lot of, that was voted one of the top 25 all-time best golf instruction books.
Right.
So The Putting Prescription, that was named after Faldo when I'd make notes. This is my prescription dot, that hot me. I can't even say it better. We're now do it the way he does, but that's kind of how we named the book, was that with The Putting Prescription was after notes I would give Nick Faldo when we were working, when he's in his heyday.
Right. And what about I know you do courses and there's training things online. Tell people about all the things that you offer online.
Well, we do a lot of training trainers and different sports, but definitely in golf. We have a program to be a putt doctor associate and learn not only my visual ideas, but also set up stroke mechanics, etc. So that's a possibility for the instructors. Student-wise, as you say, the book is important. We even have people that write and want to send me videos, so we go through a little program that we can do with that. It obviously isn't as good as one-on-one, but I'd say your group of listeners needs to seek out someone in their area that's competent and working with putting and working with green reading. I think golfers don't take enough lessons, and those that do, that I see sometimes once a month, every 3 months, etc., seem to maintain a lot better than ones that think they need to see me once a year.
Yeah, yeah. And for an awful lot of people listening, the massive opportunity that they could make by improving the putting, it's good. Changing golf swings is tough, but I mean, you could make some huge improvements into things we've talked about tonight: green reading and pace control.
Absolutely, you've got some great instructors there that are good for green reading, good for putting, and I normally go and I ask like 10 students, maybe at a club that I'm invited to, how many have had a lesson on putting this year? How many have had 2? How many have had 3? Not a lot of hands.
Many hands going up.
Yeah. And what's one thing that you can learn the easiest, then it's right there on the green. You don't have to be strong. You don't have to be good at woods and irons and short game, man. Just try and get comfortable with some things that challenge on the putting, then go to the short game, then go to the 400-yard drives.
But don't you think, though, that when people can get into this, that they can walk on the green and actually see each putt as a fascinating puzzle to solve? And then I think when you frame it like that, it takes on a different dimension.
Well, yeah, it's a fun challenge. I mean, they should embrace the challenge. That's why they're playing the game in the first place. So they've got to come up with a game plan of what to do, as opposed to sitting there and sweating bullets because they think it's going to be for sure a 3-putt. Yeah, be careful what you expect, and expectations aren't too good when that's the way you're looking at things. Or when I was with Faldo and he would go, all right, it's Wednesday at pro-am day, take care of these guys. You know me, I'm going to be working on my game.
Okay.
And so one of the first things I'd ask the guys would be, hey, uh, um, what are you trying to do today? These are the amateurs. And what's the most common thing they say, Carl? I try not to
Yes. Yeah.
embarrass myself. I go, whoa, 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 whoa. Not what I want to hear. Let's talk about some positive things. So,
Talk about some intentions that you do want.
yeah, exactly. So, Nick put me in a good spot to have some interaction with people, and hopefully we helped them.
Yeah. And what would your sort of final advice be for coaches listening to this? Obviously, they can look at your information, but what advice would you give for young coaches and the potential possibility of hosting putting schools and doing more putting instruction?
Yeah, I think that that the instructors need to be thinking themselves as more as eye instructors. I meaning vision instructors. They need to realize that the biggest challenge these golfers have to start with is their basic skills. They don't aim and align very well. So learning that technique, learning how to handle that is important. We go through that big time in our instructor series and make them realize that one of the things that will set them apart is not only, yes, I work a lot with putting, but I work with basic skills to make you better with all of the game through putting to start with. And that's something that players get comfortable at. They can now move forward. So instructors need to not let, as I say, the inmates run the asylum, but start producing better players faster by working with basic skills.
Because as you said, as we've talked about all night, if you improve your perception, the action improves as a result of the correct perception.
Yeah, well, you're gonna work with tipping and pitching, and someone that doesn't have good eye-hand coordination. Good luck. Okay, that the mechanics are not gonna take over from the basic problems of skills, and so learning some ways that improving eye-hand coordination helps the player look better instruction-wise, because now he's got more people that embrace what he's doing because he got the basic skill to do it.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely fascinating. Thanks, Craig, ever so much. Thoroughly enjoyed that.
Thank you, Carl. Appreciate you and your readers, and best going forward. We'll do it again.